Hi, Roxana.
Hello.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Kincardine at 5 o'clock on September 11th, 2024 in the council chambers at the Municipal Administration. We have a roll call this evening. Deputy Mayor Clark.
Present.
Councillor Blackwell.
Present.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Present.
Councillor Hinchberger.
Present.
Councillor Prenger.
Present.
Councillor Steinoff-Gray.
Present.
Councillor Stewart.
Present.
And I'd like to acknowledge our staff and the members of the public in the gallery this evening as well. We have no council members attending virtually. Councillor Hinchberger, please.
We would like to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation and the Chippewas of Saugeen First Nation, whose ancestors were the first to inhabit, care for, and live on this land. We recognize and deeply appreciate the contributions that Indigenous peoples have made, both in caring for this land and shaping and strengthening this community, our province, and our country. As a public service organization, we are dedicated to learning and acknowledging Indigenous history and culture, and are committed to actions that move us towards a journey of truth, healing, and reconciliation with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, the Métis Nation of Ontario, and the historic Saugeen Métis.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any amendments, additions, or deletions to or from the agenda this evening? I'd remind councillors to disclose any pecuniary interest now or as it arises in the meeting. Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, I'd like to declare a pecuniary interest in item 6.1F, Impact Assessment Agency of Canada, Bruce C. Initial Project Description, CAO General 2024-26 report due to my husband's employment with Bruce Power.
Councillor Steinoff-Gray, please.
I would like to declare a pecuniary interest for 6.1 Foxtrot Impact Assessment Agency of Canada, Bruce C. Initial Project Description, CAO General 2024-26, as it is my employer.
Oh, Councillor Prenger.
Thank you. I too need to declare pecuniary interest for 6.1 Foxtrot Impact Assessment Agency of Canada, Bruce C. Initial, Project Description, CAO General 2024-26, as Bruce Power is my primary employer.
Okay, thank you. Need a mover and seconder for the adoption of minutes, that the minutes of the council meetings held August 28, 2024 be adopted as printed. Moved by councillors Stewart and Kavanaugh. All in favor? And that's carried. Moving into matters for public participation. Next on the agenda is a public meeting for a zoning amendment file number Z 2024-007. So this is a public meeting under the Planning Act. So if anyone from the public is interested in this application or wishes to receive notice of the decision, please send an email to bcplpe@brucecounty.on.ca. And if you don't know, that's hard to remember, talk to the planner presenter this evening to get that information. That should be easier to do rather than trying to remember that email address. First, we're going to receive a report from planning staff, and council members will have an opportunity to ask questions, and I'll ask them to reserve their comments on the application until we've heard from the public. Then we'll hear from the public who are here in person or virtually, or who have submitted correspondence to the email. Members of the public are advised that the right to appeal the decision on this application is limited to specified persons and public bodies as defined in the Planning Act, or the owner or applicant of the land subject to the amendment, who have provided oral or written comments to council on the application before the decision is made. After we heard from the public, council will discuss and consider recommendation on the application. So I now declare the public meeting open. Now ask the planner, Jake Boosfield Batisto, to present the application. Jake, please.
Hello? How's that? Good? Okay. Good evening, everybody. So the purpose of the application before you tonight is for the zoning, which is needed to facilitate a severance. That severance will be considered by the county at a later date. But I'll detail that severance. It's a lot addition that would take 1 hectare from a large, roughly 114 hectare farm parcel and adjoin it to a small landlocked parcel referred to as 644 Bruce Road 23. Currently, that small parcel is undersized as per the zoning bylaw. It also does not have adequate frontage onto Bruce Road 23. So this lot addition would remedy those issues, bringing it into conformity with the zoning bylaw. Areas of high archaeological potential are noted on the property related to the former Algonquin Beach Bluff. No work is being proposed at this time, so instead of requiring a study, the recommendation is that a holding provision be applied so that any future development would be subject to appropriate archaeological studies. So this brings me back to the recommendation to council tonight that the zoning bylaw be amended to add this provision. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. Are there any questions from council to the planner regarding any technical issues here? Actually, I do have one. In increasing the lot size, is there a provision that somewhere along the line that they will, like if there's any requirement for water, that they will be required to connect to municipal services?
I
Like is there opportunity to drill a well, or is it only connection to municipal services? Is this the right time for this question, or is that a later on? Because there's water there, and I'm wondering what that provision would be.
Sure. I don't have an answer at this time. I can get back to you on that. I believe the intention would have been for a drilled well. But if the services are there, as you say, that's something I can look into further. I would say if it impacts your opinion, the severance hasn't been approved yet, so it's something that could be considered as a condition of severance. If that helps with your decision.
Yeah, no, that's fine, but they will have legal frontage on County Road 23.
Okay.
Which might trigger that necessity, and I just wanted to make sure that we or they are aware of what that provision might be.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Thank you. All right, so now we'll hear from members of the public, and I'm wondering if the applicant or the agent for the applicant would like to make a submission. Okay. Is there anyone else from the public here to speak in support of the application? Okay. In support, or there's also opportunity to speak in opposition too. So, okay, please come up to the microphone. Would you give your name, please, for the record before making your comments, please?
Peter DiCoco. I have a question. Does this include a roadway into to get in access to County Road 23?
That's a question for you, Jake. Could you please explain the extent of the addition? Is it only the lot around the buildings, or does it extend down along the laneway to include it as part of the lot so that they have legal frontage?
It would include frontage onto 23, but only insofar as the depth of where that house currently is. Not further into the farm, the large farm parcel. Does that
I
clarify?
was just wondering whether this application included the roadway. Because you only talked about the expanding the line.
Excuse me, could we have you come to the microphone, please? Peter, just ask a question so everyone can hear. Thank you.
No, I was just referencing increasing the lot size and not providing access to Road 23. And I was just wondering whether this would included access to Road 23 or County Road 23.
So currently the parcel is landlocked. There is an easement which connects it to County Road 23. The parcel would be increased to square off right to 23. So that easement will no longer be necessary and they would be able to have a normal driveway onto 23.
Okay, thank you, Jake. Are there any other comments in support or in opposition to this application? Okay, seeing none. Council members, do you have any questions before we close the public meeting and discuss the application? Okay, seeing none, I declare the public meeting to be closed then. So we now consider a recommendation on the application. So at this point, I would like to mover and seconder that council approve the zoning amendment or zoning bylaw amendment application Z 2024-007 for Henry and Lynn Boskamp at 644 Bruce Road 23, and the necessary bylaw be forwarded to council for adoption. Moved by councilors Prenger and Blackwell. Any further discussion? All in favor? And that's carried. And, okay, so we're out of the public meeting already. All right, thank you, Jake. Lynn, Peter, thanks for being here for the consideration. All right, so we're into staff reports, and this evening we're having first discussion that council has had following the presentation by Dr. Lindo regarding the Secord monument. And we're considering the disposition of the monument paying tribute to Dr. Solomon Secord. The monument was erected in recognition of his humanitarian service, and it's been there for a considerable length of time. But with as many other things, times have changed. Societal and cultural expressions of respect and recognition have changed. And as a result, council, staff, and the public have faced with courage and transparency the process of determining how or if the Secord monument truly reflects the stated values and expectations of our municipality. The journey personally, and I think corporately, has been eye-opening, informative, and demanding. For me, it's been a series of introspective and reflective peaks and valleys, and hopefully soon a plateau where we come to a decision regarding the future of that monument. So the decision has been informed by public input, analysis by Dr. Laura May Lindo, research by staff and ourselves, and some of that staff research, if I might just reiterate some of it, regarding the possibility of relocating the monument to an external organization. And staff, I know, has connected with 4 external organizations, 3 within our municipality and 1 outside. And the response each time was they did not have resources or abilities to place or recontextualize the monument. Another thing that we have discovered, I think corporately, is we are not anti-Black racism experts. And as such, we have valued the input of our community, of our consultant, And we acknowledge we are here representing as best we can the interests of the municipality of Kincardine. The research has shown that education and contextualization, at least as I had originally thought appropriate, is likely beyond the scope of our present municipal resources. We acknowledge that we will keep trying to be inclusive. We will keep practicing, but it is still a enormous municipal effort to fulfill what the expectations of recontextualization and education might be. The research has also shown that our municipality has a need for a commemorative recognition policy or guidelines going forward. Who do we celebrate? What accomplishments? Why do we do it? For how long do we do that? So this evening, council process changes a little bit. And rather than having a motion presented of which we would debate the relative merits, I will offer council members opportunity to reflect, analyze, and struggle with and comment on the process, the course of action that you would prefer if you choose to do that, and the ultimate outcome of the actions that we direct either tonight or if able or in 2 weeks. Many comments I expect will overlap, and I encourage you to say them out. Don't just say, well, I agree with this and that. Say them out so that we know where you're at. Say them as though it's the first time you've spoken them. Any questions regarding the process or path forward for this evening? Okay. Seeing none, I will go first. So there are a lot of things about this monument that we know, and there's a lot of things that we do not know. We know of Dr. Secord's humanitarian service, his passion, his compassion, his medical abilities, and his friends and colleagues' admiration of who he was. But we do not know for sure the motives or the mindset behind why he did, what he did, where he did, or the motives of his colleagues in erecting a second monument to Dr. Secord. We know at the time of dedication, the words on the plaque were culturally accepted. And we know now that, as in many situations, past language does not reflect present attitudes or the desired acknowledgement and respect of all humanity. We know that Dr. Secord has a commemorative monument at the Kincardine Cemetery, and we know that there's a display at the Walker House there celebrating his achievements. So for these and other reasons, I could talk a long time, but these are the main reasons, I believe. I personally would support the respectful decommissioning of the Secord Monument. So in conclusion, I mentioned earlier that we couldn't know for sure motives for their actions. Going forward, based on Dr. Secord's character, his profession, his compassion, I actually will take the liberty of putting words into his mouth. Let not the removal of this monument be cause for harm in any way to any man, woman, or child. Dr. Secord took the oath. We can follow his example. Do no harm. Further comments? Councillor Kavanagh.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, the mayor has done an excellent job summarizing the intensive process that the municipality has undergone to arrive at this moment. Questions around the future of the Secord Monument existed prior to the 2022 election campaign and doubtless played a factor in who our residents elected to council. As I look around this table, I want to reiterate how much I appreciate the work that Dr. Lindo has done to ensure that all members of our community were heard, and that their views and opinions that were shared were passed along to all members of council through her detailed report. Her report highlights a continuum of responses. First, why we're here. There are those in the community that see the monument as racist and problematic and desire a change in the status quo. There were also those that see the historical significance of the monument and what Dr. Secord meant to our community, and in some cases, rate this as a greater priority than any concerns for racial or social issues. Finally, I also want to acknowledge there's a significant segment of our community that can see both the historical and racial components, and to their full credit, acknowledge that these values are competing for an outcome here. Coming into this process, I fully expected the outcome would require some form of compromise. To that end, I was originally inclined to pursue an option where the monument could be removed from municipal property and preserved and relocated to the museum with additional information, context, education, and recontextualization. I had hopes that this would allow the community a way forward in a process of healing. However, as the mayor has shared, the option to receive the monument was declined by the museum, Walker House, the Legion, and the hospital. This additional information really makes that sort of solution much less tenable. During this process, there have also been several local incidents that have occurred outside the process that have also impacted my decision tonight. Driving north from Goderich, I passed a White Lives Matter sign that was prominently displayed on the edge of 21, located south of Kincardine. I saw posts online calling for people to deface, damage, or destroy the Afrocentric mural at the Davidson Center. I also read posts where members of our local Black community were doxxed, which is to say their personal identity and address was revealed and posted online for all to see. If organizations such as the museum do not have the resources to undertake preservation and recontextualization, and I feel keeping the monument in a form will serve as a way to embolden hate speech and racist ideals, I have to take a step back and realize this is about a lot more than just a single monument. And at the end of the day, after heavy deliberation, I am in support of decommissioning the Secord monument.
Councillor Prenger?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I've considered what to say and how much to say tonight quite a bit. And I realized I had more to say than I even thought I would, but I'll admit right now, I'm sorry, I'm not feeling the greatest. I will do my best to stay on track. Please bear with me. Clearly, this is not a simple issue, and coming to a decision was incredibly difficult. I can recognize that there's several camps and their opinions on what the monument means and what we need to do with it. And I'll admit that I started out at the beginning of this process at a very different place than I've ended up in terms of how I feel about this and my perspective on it, and which way I've decided to go in terms of my recommendation of what would happen. I will take a minute to recognize that I understand the perspective of those who love history and want to preserve history. I actually started out there, I will admit. I do believe that if we do not educate ourselves on our history and we forget history, we repeat it, and that's detrimental to our society. However, through this process and thanks to the work done by Dr. Lindo and the information provided by our community members and the research done by staff and our council members, I learned quite a bit. And I'll just give it's one of the few examples I have experience with on the historical side of these things, and it does have to do with specifically with the Black community, and I think that applies here. Is that I have past colleagues who would argue that removing such types of monuments that's at the time were appropriate and in some way celebrated racism or slavery in some way, removing them from our society is a way of erasing history and not allowing people to learn from those mistakes. However, I've come to the conclusion that in our context, in this small town, and in the way the monument was produced, I actually don't see much opportunity to educate people using this particular monument in our particular community. I don't think, especially based on the fact that, say, the museum has denied moving it there. That's a great place to learn about history. I don't see how we as a community, as a municipality, could facilitate that type of learning using this particular monument. So I can't support that perspective anymore. That being said, I've come to a point where I'm tired of the divisiveness in our society. The things that have happened over the past 4 years have pit people against each other, and this monument is doing that in this little microcosm of our community even more. And I've made a decision to try to foster bringing people back into the fold and having empathy for everyone, people on each side, even though that's difficult sometimes. There are some actions I will never condone, and I can't bring those people into my life. But I don't think keeping the monument is a way to foster inclusivity, and I think that, sorry, starting to get off track now. I think we are allowing, if we allow the monument to stay, I'm going to skip a few things I wanted to say and try to finish up here. If we allow the monument to stay, I think we're inviting some of the, I'm sorry, but I've seen and heard some deplorable things in the past little while from some of our community members that I was shocked about. I did not realize that I know racism will never, ever not exist in any way. It will always exist in some ways. People have their opinions. It's your human right to have an opinion. It's your human right to express that opinion. It is everyone's human right to live without being negatively impacted by your opinions. So I think that keeping the monument is inviting people to continue a certain level of hate in our community that I don't think is appropriate. So I'm going to end there. Thank you. And I will admit that I've come to the point that I support decommissioning and recycling of the monument. Thank you.
Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through the chair. Probably going to be a little bit more detailed here, so I need a little altitude on time. And I have it on my screen in front of me, Dr. Lindo's PowerPoint presentation. So I was looking at the key themes: need for community healing, centering Black voices, challenges tying identity to a legend, myth, or historical recollection, the municipality we want to be, learn more, do better, and navigating complicated history. So I'm just going to lay out my thought process here. So I supported the expenditure for a public consultation for a few reasons. One was to give the community the opportunity to come together, work through the issue, and come to a conclusion that would ultimately make it stronger, having gone through the exercise. To demonstrate that the one-time motto of the town of Kincardine, quote, "where you're a stranger only once," was a statement of fact and not just a vision. Another was to help me understand attitudes, which I intended to use to inform how strongly I thought the actions ultimately directed by council might need to be. Regardless of its origin, the second monument is on public property. And in the absence of some type of agreement, no citizen, group of citizens, or organization should have an expectation of donating something to the municipality and have it remain as is in perpetuity. It's owned by the public, no specific individual or group, and therefore decisions about it are subject to the requirement for council to act in the best interest of the public as a whole. Previous debates over the second monument have included disagreement on whether the monument is a Confederate monument or a local monument. I feel that it can be and is in fact both. With town council's permission in 1994, a Civil War Reenactment Society set up a display based on a Confederate artillery camp in Victoria Park as part of the Canada Day celebrations. The society marched in the parade, laid a wreath at the monument, and fired a 26-gun salute. It's unlikely that they were here to honor his contributions to our community, and asking others to put aside questions about whether the monument is a Confederate one or not is, in my opinion, a bit much to ask. I have accumulated a small library at home over the past year or so in reviewing the historical record, the complicated history. As for Dr. Secord's contributions to the town of Kincardine and the local community during the period between settling down for good in Kincardine around 1873 and his death in 1910, I find nothing other than accounts of a devoted family physician who cared deeply for his patients and the community. Despite having no bearing on Dr. Secord's contribution to the town and its surrounding areas, I can appreciate the temptation during the 1910 to 15 period when the second monument was constructed of commemorating the doctor's service in the Confederate Army on a monument following his death for a few reasons. At the dawn of the 20th century, the American Civil War remained one of the most significant events in history. Canadians participated by the thousands, albeit the vast majority for the Union, and the dynamics of the conflict were an essential factor in our country's birth. In 1862, Marx and Engels observed, quote, "From whatever standpoint one regards it, the American Civil War presents a spectacle without parallel in the annals of military history." And Secord was in military service. The process to commemorate Laura Secord's contribution to the War of 1812 was well underway as part of the women's suffrage movement in the country, leading to the erection of a monument in her honor at Queenston Heights. And Dr. Secord had a family connection. Lastly, after the population of the town of Kincardine peaked in 1881 at around 2,900 people, the town and the surrounding areas were significantly impacted by social and economic trends, including the Industrial Revolution, which led to a population decline of more than 30% by 1911, 30 years later. At the time, it might have seemed like a great idea to boost the town alongside other actions such as the introduction of the Kincardine Old Boys and Girls Reunion. I can also imagine that saying our family physician for 50 years sounded better than the actual 44 when you factor out the 6 years spent in the United States on 2 different occasions. Yet this ignored or erased some essential history associated with the American Civil War, including the voice of Black people in this process. And as the facilitator's report noted, it's important to center Black voices in this discussion. In 1860, at the outset of the American Civil War, there were 4 million enslaved Black Americans in the southern states. Roughly 46 out of every 100 people in the state of Georgia, with a total population of 1 million, were enslaved. The cotton industry was an integral part of the economy of the South, and enslaved labor supported it. For decades, free and slave states had been embroiled in conflicts, sometimes violent, over the future of the institution of slavery, and Lincoln's election in 1860 proved to be the tipping point. Southern states began to secede before Lincoln even took office. To some rewriting of history that occurred during the end of the 19th century, the architects of the Confederacy had made their intentions clear. Alexander Stephens, Vice President of the Confederate States of America, ridiculed the idea of racial equality in his speech in March 1861. Quote, "Our new government is founded upon exactly the opposite idea. Its foundations are laid, its cornerstone rests upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man, that slavery, subordination to the superior race, is his natural and normal condition. This, our new government, is the first in the history of the world based on the great physical, philosophical, and moral truth." Numerous political leaders who rallied the southern states to secede subsequently turned in their civilian roles to become military leaders. Among those was Henry Benning, who for much of the Civil War commanded the brigade composed of 4 regiments, including the 20th Georgia, to which Dr. Secord was assigned. Benning, a lawyer, legislator, and judge from Georgia, was also a plantation and slave owner and bitterly opposed the emancipation of slaves. Although considered for a cabinet position in the Confederate government, he chose to join the Army instead. Initially colonel of the 17th Georgia, he soon commanded the brigade in 1863. Camp Benning was established near Columbus, Georgia in 1918. It later became Fort Benning and grew to become a base for more than 100,000 military personnel in the U.S. In 2023, its name was changed to Fort Moore as part of a process of renaming U.S. military assets associated with the Confederacy. Numerous other regiment commanders in the brigade were also plantation and slave owners. Regardless of his personal views on slavery, there's an absence of primary reference to support the notion that Dr. Secord was an active abolitionist at the time of the Civil War. Records indicate that he willingly went to Georgia in 1860. There's no indication he was pressed into service with the Confederate Army in 1862, and subsequent to being captured by Union forces at Gettysburg in 1863, escaped and returned to the Confederacy. Despite declaring having never given up his allegiance to the British government in his letter of resignation in November 1864, his enlistment in the Confederate Army violated a royal proclamation of neutrality issued in May 1861. The claim in the resignation letter that he had not by oath or otherwise rendered his allegiance to the Confederacy runs contrary to the requirement for Army personnel, including those of the medical department in which the doctor held commissions of the ranks of captain and major, to take an oath of allegiance to the Confederacy. Comparisons to Doctors Without Borders do not hold. The Confederate Medical Department existed to provide medical care to soldiers of the Confederate Army. By doing so, it prolonged the fighting strength of the Army and prolonged the conflict, as it was not uncommon for wounded soldiers to return to active duty after treatment. The notion that surgeons would have treated soldiers on both sides equally again leaves out Black voices. Approximately 180,000 Black soldiers served in the Union Army during the Civil War, and mistreatment and sometimes massacre of surrendering Black soldiers was a known issue. Finally, despite indicating that he never intended to make his home outside of Canada, the doctor again left the Kincardine area with his family in 1871, attempting to set up residence and practice in Missouri. Last November, I was asked by a citizen about my position on the monument. After summarizing my rationale and qualifying that my position could always change, I noted that if it were solely up to me, it wasn't and won't be. I'd have the objection of Civil War commemoration removed from the monument, possibly to be replaced by some other text. I also noted that as far as location, given his area of contribution, I had thoughts to relocating it to the hospital or medical center grounds, but for reasons that you described earlier, that's not a possibility. One thing that hasn't changed for me since then is that the status quo, which is returning the monument to the library unchanged, is not acceptable. That has not changed for me. At this moment, after the past several months of reflection and untold numbers of discussions, removing the wording alone feels more like removing some letters and feels like erasing the issue rather than addressing it. Altering the monument with some additional wording or adding plaques to set context seems almost impossible given what I've described earlier. This leaves us with permanently removing the monument, albeit that has a finality to it, and I do have concerns about blowback or fallout on members of visible minority groups if this path is chosen, given the veiled threats over the past months on social media that have been described earlier. This is where I sit at this moment.
Councillor Stanoff Gray, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. This is something that I have definitely struggled with throughout this process. I would say that I have been all over the map and what I want to do with it at different points in this journey. I think the thing that's resonating most with me is one of my problems with trying to recontextualize it is, what are we trying to recontextual it to say based on the evidence that Councillor Hinchberger has been able to provide, and it's very well documented. I have no doubts in the accuracy of the content, given the level of effort that's gone into it, including those brought by our community members. I'm not confident that he didn't willingly go and sign up. So how do I recontextualize that? I don't know how you recontextualize that. I'm just being brutally honest. The other thing I'm really struggling with here is what I've seen written by the community. Even when you read some of the survey responses, I felt that Dr. Lindo did an excellent job of actually remaining unbiased, because she did a better job than I could have. I don't even think I truly understood all sides of the argument until she helped frame it for me, understanding that love of history and that I'm proud to be from this community. I've been in this community my entire life, so I understand that sense of community. But the thing I'm struggling with is this fracture in our community that I'm seeing, and the things that I can't condone, the hate that's being put on the internet, the things that people are feeling comfortable saying, the movements that I'm seeing coming up, and I can't pretend that it's okay, and this conversation is just one part of it. And so for me, I've struggled because I don't want to make it worse. I don't want to punish where there shouldn't be punishment. I don't want this to be punitive in nature, but I also can't condone what's happening right now. So where I'm standing from, I know that putting it back as it is unacceptable for me.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. I start off this evening thanking the staff for the amount of time and resources that have gone in to the issue of the monument, as well as thanking the community who have engaged meaningfully in this process, as challenging as it has been to navigate. They have been open even in the most difficult and uncomfortable of situations. They have expressed a genuine desire on either side of the discussion. And I'm grateful for the counselors that sit at this table, the time that they have taken both to research, to consider, and to reflect on the next steps, and in many, if not all cases, what is going to cause the least amount of harm. There's a saying when I was reflecting on this, that the path to redemption and resurrection is through creativity, which is often caused via pain because it causes the necessity. There's no doubt that I have taken the opportunity to try and creatively see how and where this monument could address the issues of education, some form of healing, inevitably, more than likely, in a manner of recontextualization. You've heard, and I won't reiterate, that there has been some polite declines in accepting the monument. Without an acceptable venue, recontextualization doesn't become a viable option. So we're left with, what do we do with this monument? The journey has been one that has been challenging, I must admit, to navigate. The first phase of the survey was difficult and painful to listen to some of the comments. They were pretty raw. I like to encompass that perhaps as my despair phase. It was harsh and it was real. And I perhaps did not have a good understanding at that stage as to why the comments were being made, or to the extent some individuals wished to hold on to history. The second phase, where Dr. Lindo had the small group phase and conversations, I like to call that my hope phase. What came out of that was overwhelmingly the desire by our community to heal, to be educated, and to move past the division. When we look at the monument itself, and perhaps less about Dr. Secord, because there are so many unanswered questions, the inscription as it reads pays homage to his service as a surgeon in the Southern Army during the Civil War. We know categorically the Southern Army in the Civil War were on the wrong side of history. They lost the war. They sought to dehumanize a group of people based on race. They lost. We were all better for it. So when we have an inscription that is centered on a monument such as that, it becomes problematic any way that you look at it. There have been much discussion about the need to remember history. The removal of the monument, certainly for me, in no way is eradicating history. I have no doubt that the Civil War will continue to be studied in schools, something that will be learned about in museums, but there's a distinguishable difference between remembering history and revering history. There are certain aspects of history that we do not wish to put on a pedestal or revere in any manner. The Civil War, when we talk about the Confederate Army, is one of them. And we know that monuments such as these were done intentionally. They weren't erected necessarily to honor the men that were on these monuments. They were a part of a movement, the cult of the lost cause. They were rewriting history. We must be careful when we try and sanitize history. We have to remember history for its faults, as well as for the victories that occurred. When we acknowledge history, we absolutely will learn from it, and we hopefully will not repeat it. So this evening, when I come to this table, my view is I wholly understand those who say the monument should stay as it is. I understand the issue tied when you hold so dearly to the past. I understand when you feel that your identification is intertwined with this history. But tonight I say it's okay to loosen the grip. It's okay to let the past go, because together we can build a better future. We know that the past will always be there. And we know that for many, it symbolizes what this community was, but it's perhaps more important that we look at what we'd like this community to be. So tonight, we have the opportunity not to forget the past, to absolutely remember it, but be certain about the aspects of it that we wish to revere and or celebrate. And look forward to what an inclusive community looks like as we continue to walk on that journey. The journey getting here has certainly not been an easy one. My position starting out had been one squarely focused on looking at some form of recontextualization. But when there is no viable options and no viable alternatives that are presented, I would support the decommissioning of the Secord monument. Not because I wish to eradicate or change history. In fact, to the contrary. Tonight in this council chamber, we are making history. And on that, I would be more than happy to bring a motion forward that the Secord monument be decommissioned. If I have to cast a vote, I will do that based on my conscience. There are those who say I have been elected to be their voice. And to them I say, know that I will always be your voice, but I will never be your mouthpiece. When I come into this council chamber tonight and every night, I will vote in accordance with my conscience. The night that I walk through the council chamber doors and sit at this table and I'm unable to vote in accordance with my conscience will be the night that I step down from council. We have to understand that the removal of a statute does not end racism. We must make a commitment to continue to educate ourselves and others. This is one part of the journey that we must address, both from a point of substantive nature through education, but also from a symbolic nature, and that is the removal of this statute. Should there be a vote taken tonight, I most certainly would be calling for a recorded vote, and I will allow history to be the judge of whether I'm on the right side of it.
Councillor Stewart?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. This has been an interesting discussion. Yeah. This issue should no way ever came up to council. It's caused us to fracture the community and fracture the council. This is really unfortunate. You know, our responsibility to the community is not to be their moral compass. Unfortunately, it has come to play. That part is unfortunate. I mean, I got voted in because I'm practical and, you know, it's a financial thing. To make a decision like this, it's hard for 9 people around here, sorry, Doug, 8 people around here to make that kind of decision. I wish it would just disappear. You know, it's extremely difficult. It's fractured us, it's fractured the council, it's fractured the community. You know, I mean, you know, slippery slope. You know, I mean, it's the statue, whether we keep it up or not. Then we go out to Victoria Park. I think Queen Victoria was a racist, so do we eliminate the name Victoria Park? And do we, there's school books, there's books inside the library that are racist. Maybe we should have a book burning thing. It's a very difficult. That's why the act is there. We're not really supposed to be involved with things like this, even if the community asks us to be involved. It's a very difficult decision. I look around the room, people are crying, people are very emotional. The community is very emotional about this. Whether we say yes or no, we're going to hear about it, unfortunately. So I hope it's a valuable lesson for us as council that we sort of steer away from this kind of stuff. This kind of racism is dealt with at home, church, schools, and things like that. I mean, I'm really fortunate. I'm a 67-year-old man, but I have two kids and they're 30 and they're colorblind. So whatever was taught at home was taught at home that, it didn't matter race, color, creed, religion, everyone was equal. These kind of things are better off at home, maybe at church, at sort of community centers. I will always speak up against being anti-racist to all my family and to all my friends and to my community. I just think it's really difficult. I'm sorry that it's come up to council, and I'm sorry that we do have to make a decision because we can't keep using our time on this kind of issues. I know it's important to the community, it's important to a lot of individuals around the table, but it is not very good use of our time and what we're really voted for. So I think that you have a motion on the floor. Is that correct? Okay. I'm just going to end it there, and I hope this gets resolved tonight.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you, through you. Kind of in reference to that, I guess. I do feel a great deal of responsibility as the individual who brought forward the first motion to take a pause on its return. And prior to the election, I was only asked by one person about how I felt about the monument. And I spoke very truthfully at the time that I had no real stance beyond feeling that there was merit in fulfilling the recommendations that had been made by multiple committees of the prior term, which was to do some public engagement and consider the voices of those who may not have been heard before. Also, prior to the election, I was told that I was often naive and saw things through rose-colored glasses. And I think in some ways, this process shattered those a bit because it was so much more painful and challenging than I could have acknowledged. Because the monument was on public property and was a public monument, it feels to me that it was within our purview to consider whether its return in that location, potentially with that wording, was the best choice for us to take. I want to say that I have struggled through this process. It has not been personally easy for me. It has not been something that I came to with a idea of what I wanted. And to get to the point that I am at now has required me to sit in discomfort much more than I thought that I would have to. I feel like I could speak at length about the research that I have done, the conversations that I have had with members of the community, with Civil War historians, with people who talk a lot in research about monuments and public spaces. I don't know that those matter as much as acknowledging that there are people to whom this monument is extraordinarily precious, and there are people to whom this monument is extraordinarily painful. When I think about public space and public places in our community, my goal would always for them to be welcoming to every member of our community. I think when this started, I, as the eternal optimist, felt there had to be some beautiful creative compromise that would allow those who are strong holders of our history and our past and the foundation that has built this beautiful community to still feel reflected while acknowledging that times have changed, that causes, even at the time, were acknowledged to be abhorrent. I think that through the process of discovering that there aren't other places or organizations that have the capacity or interest perhaps in joining in that work, and as Councillor Stewart acknowledged, is not something within our own resources. my position has felt, I guess, very uncomfortable, yet I feel I have no other option. And I feel in the end, when I think about who I'm asking to compromise, who I'm asking to consider, there's a certain group of our community that I think deserves to not necessarily have to compromise. And yet I'm very concerned about how those who hold the monument dear may respond. I think, again, so much of this seems to be a trial of Dr. Secord, and I want to be really clear that I don't think that that should be the focus. I think he was not alive when the monument was created. And all of the research I've done, he did not speak openly about his involvement in the Civil War in a way that made me feel that that's what he may have wanted on a monument to him. And when I think about how I might contextualize it or how I might change it to try and reflect the kind of values that I think are ones that I want to celebrate, such as providing medical care to all in our community, I can't really think of a contextualization that is any better than the plaque that's on the existing monument in the cemetery, which was the original monument erected by his friends prior to Hugh Clark erecting the second monument. The last thing was something was sent to me, and it is a quote that I personally have saved on my own documents, but it's a quote by Adam Grant, which says, basically, not to spend your life being a dutiful descendant, but instead to be a good ancestor. When I think about my family and I think about my children, I want to create a world where they can walk in any public space and feel safe and comfortable and proud, and that their values are respected. I am certainly not naive enough to expect that my own actions or my own beliefs at this point will not be challenged in the future. And in fact, I hope that they are. I hope that the fumblings that I have tried to do in equity, inclusion, diversity, creating a community that's better than the one that was there, continues to evolve and grow. And people might say she was of her time and we've moved on, and nothing would make me prouder, to be honest. As the person who brought the very first motion, I do feel a responsibility to bring forward a motion, and I will put one on the table, if that's okay. So I would like to make a motion that the second monument is removed permanently from public display and decommissioned and respectfully decommissioned.
We have a proposed motion. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Kavanaugh, please. Is there any further discussion regarding the motion that's on the floor? Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. Through you, I understand decommissioning. It was never commissioned, so I guess it can be decommissioned. But what does that mean for the monument itself? Does that mean we destroy the monument? Does that mean we bury the monument? I mean, you know, if we're going to decommission, I assume we're not going to put it up in public. So, what's happening to it? You might as well be part of the motion.
If I may, please correct me as we go along. There has been some research done, Councillor, regarding the appropriate means of, and I appreciate the word it was never commissioned, but it's trying to express that we like we're not going to bury it under a road someplace. It will not be put in storage. It will not be thrown in the landfill. It will be it will be destroyed in a fashion that somehow is respectful. Like I'm not sure of what that looks like or how it's done, but you know, there's a process for flags, there's a process for other things, and I'm sure our staff will find a means and methods by which it is no longer available for usage. Further discussion? We have a request for a recorded vote, I believe, from the deputy mayor. Okay, so according to procedural bylaw, the person requesting the recorded vote, begins, and then we go to the left, so it'll be Deputy Mayor Clark that begins, and we will rotate round, and I'll be the last person. So the motion, can I have the clerk read the motion, please?
So the motion is that the second Secord monument be removed permanently from public display and decommissioned. Okay. Deputy Mayor,
Yes.
Councillor Hinsberger,
Yes.
Councillor Prenger,
Yes.
Councillor Stewart,
No.
Councillor Blackwell,
Yes.
Councillor Steinhoff Gray,
Yes.
Councillor Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes. I would, at this point, like to extend my thanks to the council members tonight that have so eloquently expressed the challenges that you have faced going through this process. We have been informed by our community. We have felt some of the angst, the pain, and the anguish. Like many challenging decisions, we have the opportunity to start now to move forward and make the community a better place that we envision. So once again, thank you also to staff, to Ms. Fiozzi and her team that has researched and worked so hard on this as well. Okay. Staff reports B, declare seat of Ward 1, Councillor Kennedy vacant. We need a mover and seconder that whereas Doug Kennedy was elected as Ward 1 councillor for the municipality of Kincardine for the 22-26 term and was a dedicated and valuable member of council, various committees, and the community at large, whereas Councillor Kennedy passed away on August 15, 2024. Now therefore be it resolved that the office of Ward 1 councillor occupied by Councillor Kennedy be declared vacant in accordance with Section 262(1) of the Municipal Act 2001. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Blackwell and Councillor Stewart. Is there any discussion? All in favor? And that is carried. Options to fill vacant office of Ward 1 councillor, legislative services. We need a mover and seconder that council receive report legislative services 2024-24. Options to fill vacant office of Ward 1 councillor, and further the council approve the council vacancy policy, and further the council direct staff to proceed with and whoever makes it gets to choose the option to fill vacant office of Ward 1 councillor. Moved by Councillor Kavanaugh, second by Councillor Prenger, that we proceed with option 2, which would be to,
The option to appoint an eligible elector.
okay. Discussion, please. Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you to your chair. I think it's probably worth saying publicly, if we were to go the by-election route, the way the process would work would not have a replacement in office until the earliest was roughly February of 2025. And at that point in time, getting somebody up to speed and all the requirements and all, et cetera, sort of that tacked on to that, where we are, September, 6 months. I just say that the concerns I have in there is I'm concerned. I acknowledge I have my own biases, and I'm concerned, and we'll have to manage this if this resolution passes. That when the time comes, that we, in some ways, I think I said to the mayor, if we could copy and paste Doug, I would. But that we choose somebody that kind of, to our best ability, would reflect what Councillor Kennedy brought to the table, and fight that bias to look at people who share, say, our opinions. The last is just that you are giving somebody here through this process, just thinking ahead to 2026, they are getting a bit of a leg up should they choose to run for reelection. You're essentially providing a lot of free exposure to the community by doing that. That's something to consider as well. And the cost, just it was roughly the difference between the by-election and going the appointment route was $30,000 plus there would be an increase in staff time required to go the by-election route. Is that correct? So, thanks.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you, and I could support option two. Last term, we actually went with option two, and we were happy enough and glad enough to have our deputy mayor voted in, and she decided that she liked the job so much that she wanted to run. So that's wonderful. It's the best option from my experience, option two. The only question I have in going through you, Mayor, to the Jennifer, what happens if we get a couple hundred people applying for this job? I mean, how do we screen it, or do we accept everyone and we go through I mean, the last time they all came to the table, they had their 5 minutes to say. I'm just wondering, how do you do this if you get like half the community want to become our new counselor?
Through you, Mayor. I think the process remains the same. So, I mean, it would be listening to all those people, looking at all of their applications, as long as they are eligible and they're able to fill the application process, then the process would be the same. I don't think there would be any opportunity for staff or anyone else to, pre-screen people.
Yeah, time and applicant management, absolutely. Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. I have to say that as much as I took part in the appointment process, or I was appointed last term, I'm somewhat swayed by a by-election. I think the only thing that has me hesitant is the timing of when the by-election would actually occur. And for me, one of my considerations was the fact that we still have half this term left currently, and I would probably be more persuaded if the by-election could have occurred this year, because there's a significant period left in this term. I do think when we're heading into the early part of next year, it may change the landscape a bit. But I take Councillor Hinchberger's point. The challenges that happen with appointments are we have to try and manage our own internal biases, and it really is far more of a democratic process to have a by-election and allow the residents to elect who they wish to represent them. So I certainly have had to weigh those considerations, and I think because of the timing, I probably could support option two, but I do so with a little bit of a heavy heart, I must say.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, I share that perspective that my preference would always be for the democratic process, also acknowledging a bit of the irony that Doug and I were both acclaimed. We were elected, but acclaimed. And so I'm also recognizing that looking at the timeline for a by-election puts that individual joining us after budget with only a year and a half left. And so as Councillor Hinchberger stated, I think a big piece will be not trying to perhaps pick someone that we think would be on our side with votes, but someone that would be a complement, an addition to the table, and additional perspective. One piece for me, speaking very candidly as a Ward 1 councillor, it will be important to me that the individual is from Ward 1 to represent Ward 1. I recognize that the Municipal Act does not limit individuals putting their name forward who live in any part of the municipality. I also recognize there have been conversations around whether wards are the best representation. But I think in order to have a proportional representation with the current makeup, it would be important to me that that person also came from Ward 1.
Clerk, would you, I appreciate your comments, but it leads us into some murky waters. So Clerk, could you comment on the, the eligibility of candidates and what the Municipal Act directs us to actually do rather than form that narrow opinion already? Could you speak to that, please?
Through you, Mayor. The Municipal Act allows that anyone who resides in a municipality or is the owner or tenant of land there or the spouse of such tenant or owner, they must be a Canadian citizen, they must be at least 18 years old and not prohibited from voting under either the Municipal Act or any other law, or the Municipal Elections Act or any other law. So the Act does say that as long as you're a resident in the municipality, no matter the ward, you could run in various wards. So we'll have more details on that no matter which option we go, but those are your basics.
Just to comment, I understand the sentiments, but having that mindset as we go into it, does that put us in a legal challenging situation? Like could the candidates submit legal challenge if they thought we were biased regarding where they're from, to win the election? Like if we stated, well, they have to be from Ward 1, that puts us in a pretty tough situation, doesn't it?
I think there's probably an opportunity for saying that council maybe come into it with a closed mind if you're only looking at people from Ward 1, because obviously the Act says that they can be from any ward. So I would caution people to keep an open, come to the council table with an open mind, and when you look at the applicants, to keep that in mind.
Further questions? All right, so we have a motion on the floor that we receive the report, council approve the council vacancy policy, and further we direct staff to proceed with option 2, which is the appointment process to fill the vacant office of Ward 1 councillor. All in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried. Yes. Scott's Point updated wellhead protection area. We need a mover and seconder that council of the municipality concur and pass a resolution in support of the proposed wellhead protection area amendment for the Scott's Point municipal well located at 26 F's Drive. Further, the council directs staff to forward the resolution to Saugeen Valley, Grey Sauble, and Northern Bruce Peninsula Source Protection Region. Moved by councillors Hinchberger and Stewart. Any comment, question? All in favor? That's carried. Lakeshore Radio Broadcasting updated bylaw. We need a mover and seconder that council support the recommended amendments to the existing bylaw number 2022-010 Lakeside Radio Broadcasting Agreement. And further, the council enter into an updated 3-year agreement with Lakeside Radio Broadcasting Corp. Moved by councillors Steinoff, Gray, and Hinchberger. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Impact Assessment Agency of Canada, Bruce C. Initial project description. We need a mover and seconder that council, yeah, they're just declaring. Yeah, okay. And we need to wait for Rory to come back because we just lost. Okay. 5-minute bio break. If anybody needs to do that, now's the time. Thank you very much. Okay, Counselor Stewart, where we go, okay? All right, Impact Assessment Agency of Canada. We need a mover and seconder that council endorse the Municipality of Kincardine submission to Impact Assessment Agency of Canada and the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. Should be safety and not society, I think. On the initial project description for a Bruce C. new nuclear project, and the staff be directed to file the submission with the Impact Advisory Agency of Canada. Mover and seconder, Councillor Hinchberger and Kavanaugh. Discussion, please. What was your response to the tone of the letter? Appropriate, harsher, softer? Where are we at? Councillor Stewart?
Thank you, to you, Mayor. You know, from my last comments, I would have gone harsher. But I think the letter was well done, well scripted, no problem whatsoever. I just think this gave us that one opportunity maybe to raise the red flag. I think we only raised the yellow flag. So that would be my only comment. Thank you.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? And that carried. Could you hail the council members, please, Councillor?
Oh, yeah.
I did. They sent me their things earlier. Yeah, like, Amanda had, so I'm just adding them in. Counselor Blackwell and Pranger sent it to me quite a bit earlier. Oh, I thought it might have been me. Yeah, no, I'm used to. I'm conscious of what I write in here.
Well written letter. You know my opinion.
Yeah, you can see.
It's well written.
I would think.
Okay, so we're on G, Gordon, whatever. Golf. Mandatory water and sewer connection at 124 King Street and 30 Ray Street, Tiverton. We need a mover and seconder. The council pass a mandatory connection bylaw and direct staff to proceed with servicing the properties known as 124 King Street and 30 Ray Street. Moved by Councillors Stewart and Steinoff Gray. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Addendum items, matters for decision. Providing responsive and effective government. Moved by Mike Hinchberger and Jennifer Prenger. Whereas providing responsive and effective government is a focus area in integrated strategy 2.0, whereas the role of council includes developing and evaluating the policies and programs of the municipality, whereas council desires to promote a culture of continuous improvements and to ensure the accountability and transparency of the operations of the municipality. Further, that council direct the CAO to ensure that a tabular report of the public submissions into the report, a concern / service request process, become a component of the CAO quarterly report going forward, subject to satisfying any legislative requirements respecting freedom of information and protection of privacy. Councillor Hinchberger.
Thank you. Through the chair. I think we all bring to the table our various backgrounds and experiences, and so I'm going to try to downplay it a little bit. The Canadian Standards Association produces numerous standards that are designed to promote excellence across a number of fields of life, and including one that outlines management systems requirements for nuclear facilities. It's the N286 document. And what it does is it brings together requirements from other management system standards for like health, safety, environment, security, economics, and quality. And I don't expect the municipality to operate to the same standard or the same level of rigor as is expected by from the nuclear industry, by the regulator. But there are principles in the standard that are useful to help guide organizations that are striving for excellence, whether they're out to make a profit or they're municipalities or nonprofits for that matter that deliver programs and services. So there's 12 principles in the standard. I'm not going to list them, but the motion that I have really touches on mainly on 3. One of them is that problems are identified and resolved. The second is that assessments are performed. And the third is that the management system is continually improved. Now, I'd lobby that implementation of this resolution will assist council staff and the public in areas including but not limited to assessing the effectiveness of the delivery of programs and services to citizens, identification of problems, including significance and how they're resolved, and determining of adverse trends. I'll just sidetrack a little bit. One, some of my colleagues would know is that in the nuclear industry, there's a lot of emphasis put on having a low threshold of reporting to do trending. And the goal is to identify issues that are becoming a problem and do something about them before they become something very significant. And this is not just something in the nuclear industry. All this information can be useful to develop evidence-based business plans and budgets and buy-in of council and staff and the public of those plans and budgets. At the outset, I don't know what version of CityWorks we're using as our asset management system. I don't know the degree with which we've amalgamated the report of concern process into CityWorks, but I know that there are a number of other municipalities that use CityWorks for this type of process. And just looking at some of the things that were available at the outset, I could imagine a report that would include initiation date, department affected, status of the issue, description of it, recommendation, and resolution and resolution date, and have this sorted by I'll call them the 5 departments, but the CAO office, corporate services, infrastructure development, and community services. So if anyone has any questions,
Councillor Preninger, any comment before we get to the questions?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Creating an accountable and effective municipal government is one of my key priorities for this term. So I'm grateful to Councillor Hinsberger for bringing this forward. I think it's a great start, and I intend to bring a few motions forward later in this vein because it's very important. I think there's no need to recreate or start from scratch. Benchmarking other organizations that work very well and using such standards that already exist is a great way to be efficient and determine what excellence looks like and how to achieve that. So I think this is, like I said, a great start and fully support it. Thank you.
Questions? Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, would the person who, I think it was Mike that did the motion, right? Would you, could we, it's called parking lot, this whole thing, and bring this topic up? I think it'd be a perfect topic for our strategic planning meeting on the 23rd, and we could really get into the details, and it could be a strategic initiative too and everything else. Instead of doing it tonight and going through all the details, I think this needs to be drawn out more and sort of fully understand. But would you consider parking lot this and then bring it forward to our strategic planning meeting on the 23rd?
Thank you, through Chair. I would say that I don't expect the outcome to change with respect to the strategic planning session on the 23rd. For those of you, and you were, Councillor Stewart was present at that planning session as well. That one exercise we went through when we tossed all the sticky notes all over the windows and stuff like that, there was definitely a bin that was related to responsible and effective government-related efficiency, and I don't expect this is going to change this. This is standard practice universally. So,
Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
Thank you very much. And this is a question through the chair broadly to staff, is just a question of capacity. What would implementing this look on the end of staff in terms of additional time and resources required?
And I appreciate the question. And it kind of dovetails with where I'm at, because the question is, when you offered this motion to staff, like what input or what direction did they give you? Like I'm kind of hesitant about passing a motion without having heard staff's, like, maybe we're doing it already, maybe we aren't, maybe it fits in, maybe it doesn't. Could you tell me what sort of response you got from a staff inquiry?
This is so straightforward, Mayor. This is, the motion's been on the books, on the agenda for a week. There was plenty of opportunity for input. The data we have is available. I've asked before for report of concerns that have been submitted and received them with very little effort at all. So I've test drove this sort of from the outside.
So the question remains, did you ask staff to comment on your motion at all, or is it just presented?
I provided opportunity for staff to comment. There was opportunity.
Did you go and request it, or did you just throw it out and expect a response? Because there is a difference, Councillor.
Point of privilege, Your Honor, I'm not going to answer that question. I am not going to answer that question.
Would you like to respond to Councillor Kavanaugh's question or my request for information?
Sure. Through you, Mayor. There's some capacity to currently provide information about the inquiries we get through the website pretty easily. That does not give the type of information other than the number of requests and who it's directed to and the type of request it is. The citywide program and implementation that Councillor Hinchberger was speaking about during the presentation is not something we would be able to manage at this point in time. That's not implemented across the organization. We're currently not tracking things the way that was described in the motion, or sorry, described in the presentation. So in response to what was put forward in the motion, yes, I could include information that identifies what has been submitted online, but we certainly are not currently tracking every single call or email that comes in from citizens when they ask for a service.
Oh, Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. To my, through you, the chair, my fellow counselor who brought this motion, like, I get a lot of requests directly by phone or people knocking on my door. And, you know, am I supposed to put those down someplace? Because I don't have a vehicle for that. A lot of times I have to forward the message, or I have to, sometimes I can actually solve the problem. But, you know, I'm trying to understand, you know, this is a huge juggernaut. Exactly how much information do you want to take in? How much information are we going to give out? You know, and how are we going to get it in? How are we going to get it out? I mean, there's a lot of A's, B's, and C's to this, Mike.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I direct everybody to the last paragraph of the motion that council direct the CAO to ensure a tabular report of the public submissions into the report of concern service request process. That specifically or literally would mean those that are submitted through the municipality's website, online.
So the intent is to get a list of the report of concerns. That's all. Okay. Further questions? Okay. So we have a mover and seconder, all in favor of the motion? Any opposed? And that's carried. Consideration of bylaws, assigning existing airport hangar lease bylaw. We need a mover and seconder that the assign airport lease agreement Brown bylaw be deemed to be read first, second, third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw number 2024-122. Moved by councillors Blackwell and Hinchberger. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Motion to pass bylaws. So need a mover and seconder that the following bylaws are hereby read first, second, third time, finally passed this 11th day of September 2024. Amendment to zoning bylaw 2003-25 Voskamp Bruce Road 23 bylaw 2024-123. Council vacancy policy bylaw 2024-126. Sorry, that's just numbered differently than that. Okay, 124, okay. Lakeside Radio Broadcasting Core Agreement 2024, Bylaw 2024-125, and imposed mandatory water and sewage connection 30 Ray Street, 124 King Street, Bylaw 2024-126. Moved and seconded by councillors Blackwell and Stewart. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried.
Respectfully, I need to leave. I have taken a turn for even worse. I do not feel good. So I'll take my leave at this time. I lasted as long as I could.
Thank you for informing us, councillor. So moving on to the consent agenda, items listed are considered routine and acted in one motion. And of course, that the exception is any that are withdrawn by council members for discussion tonight or in a future meeting. Yes, any items that you would like withdrawn? Councillor Steinoff, Gray, please.
Can I just ask a couple questions on 8.1 consent agenda, Alpha Statistical and Information Reports, and then Charlie Environmental Services Compliance Report for August 2024 Environmental Services 2024-2026. When I was looking at this report, one of the things that jumped out at me was that our environmental compliance approval is the 40 milligrams per liter. And we exceeded that in July, and it was way higher than anticipated. It was 63.50 milligrams per liter. And I was given the records from 2023, and that number it's way bigger than anything that we've been trending. I was just wondering, Mark, if there's a reason why we've had this jump, and if you've had a chance to look at anything in August, because I only saw the July data there.
Good evening, through you, Mayor Craig.
Good evening,
So
Mark.
we, I did send out some information to council earlier this afternoon. So some of the considerations that may factor into a suspended solids type of exceedance at this point could circle back to things that are unlikely due to temperature, but could circle back to like the winter months and not having much of a winter this past year. But one of the significant concerns we had with the Kincardine site in particular in the spring, as many of you are aware, is that we had some odor related issues. Through that process, we are in full swing of running our new aeration system in the front pond. We believe that aeration cell likely churned up some old sludge and put it back into suspension. And that's where we got the release of odors. And then the ponds out back of those lagoon sites are massive. So they have huge retention times. And it is possible now that we are seeing the impacts of that aeration from aeration and problems in May starting to surface out towards the back. As I mentioned earlier, we only do bi-weekly sampling of wastewater as per our ECA requirements. So even having a sample that it is, higher, you're looking at an average result of 2 samples from the past, from those months or whatever. So it doesn't necessarily put off an overall appearance of the site. In addition to that, in July of this year, we had a contractor in that has done modeling of all 7 ponds that we own for wastewater. Through that modeling, they are able to give you some graphics as to how much sludge is in each one of those ponds. In speaking with some of our senior staff here, we have done very little sludge removal. Those 2 members that have 20 years experience each only recall the small aeration cell pond ever having some form of clean out. So we through the surveys that we had conducted in July, we do have some significant sludge buildup in the small aeration pond in Kincardine. We also have significant sludge buildup in both of the back ponds in Kincardine. Now, based on their size, it could be pushed off, or that those projects could be pushed out a bit farther. In addition to that, we have significant sludge buildup in cells 3 and 4 in Tiverton, which 3 and 4 are basically your last two. So in theory, you could have mounds of sludge in there or buildups like hills, especially with persistent or where the winds push sludge, that in theory could be getting closer to the surface, and then you could be getting some of the break off of those sludge as well. So we will be bringing a report forward to council probably within the next month, to look at fast tracking either some pre-budget approval or approval for early spring next year to start sludge removal out of those ponds.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Any further questions regarding the consent agenda? Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, I'd like to pull 8.1 Alpha Alpha, the mayor's report on the AMO conference update. Excellent report. Thank you very much for writing that for us. It's good for the public to know what's going on. We had over a dozen meetings, 6 delegations with major ministers, one of which was with the Office of the Solicitor General. And I just wanted to add on and expand with that on next Monday, we'll be having our meeting with the OPP Detachment Police Board, and we will be receiving our insurance provider then. So it's good to know that the good things come out of going to AMO.
Thank you, Councillor. Anything else from the consent agenda? Okay, we need a mover and seconder, or the consent, that council approve the recommendations contained in the consent agenda dated September 11, 2024, and direct staff to proceed with all necessary administrative actions. Moved by Councillors Blackwell and Stewart. All in favor? And that's carried. Member of Council General announcements. Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I have nothing to add tonight.
Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, being on the board of Saugeen Valley, we announced that we have a new general manager. Eric Downing has taken and accepted the position, so yeah, I think he's effective September 1st. Thank you.
Councillor Blackwell.
Thank you, through you. I had to get my phone out because this one's a little long, but I wanted to acknowledge that a few members of our firefighters participated in the 9/11 Memorial Stair Climb in Owen Sound, recognizing that today is also 9/11. So they do 10 laps of the Bayshore Arena steps for nearly 2,000 steps, representing the 110 stories of the World Trade Center building, and proceeds went to Camp Faces, which is supporting children of first responders. I also wanted to recognize that yesterday was World Suicide Prevention Day. Ontario has a new 3-digit suicide prevention number, which is 988. And lastly, on a slightly happier note, tomorrow night, Big Brothers Big Sisters are hosting a evening barbecue at Victoria Park. My son is very excited because there will be a bouncy castle. If there's ever a bouncy castle, he will be there. So looking forward to that.
Councillor Stanoff Gray, please.
I just wanted to tell everyone I got my Tiverton Fall Fair events book. So, whatever competitions you want to get ready, whether it's pie or what have you, start brushing off those recipes, getting those hay bales ready for submission. I'm usually ring steward or at some capacity at the horse show. We'd love to have more entries. The more horses, the merrier. Remember your red tail if your horse kicks. But what I was going to say is the theme is also pumpkin kisses and autumn wishes. And I'd like to give a shout out to the 2 farms coming out of Tiverton. They already have some excellent displays. I turned my head twice to get a good look at them. They did a great job. So the fair book is out and it's a wonderful event. They have a midway, they have all sorts of different things, the horse show, and they have a beauty contest for miniatures, which I'm going to try to leave the horse show to see. To the miniature horse show at the Ball Diamond. So I'm going to be giving you constant reminders because it's a wonderful event.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, I'm already dusting off my chocolate cake recipe. There's there's a category designed just for me, it feels like, so I will be entering in it again. I just wanted to take this opportunity to share with the public that Councillor Prenger, who unfortunately had to depart, Mayor Craig and myself, along with our municipal staff, we're at some county-led FDI investment attraction training today, looking at ways to bring
What does FDI mean?
foreign direct investment.
Foreign direct.
Bringing opportunities for economic growth and development to the municipality.
Deputy Mayor, please.
No announcements this evening.
Okay, a couple of three here. This coming Sunday, the 15th, is the Terry Fox Run in Kincardine. Starts at 9 o'clock at the Davidson Center. Tuesday, the 17th, Kincardine is hosting a welcoming week all in one day. Amazing work. The 17th of September, 707 Queen from 4 to 7 o'clock. Lots of partners showing off the services they provide that makes everybody welcome in our municipality. Thursday, the 19th, we are celebrating volunteer appreciation at the Underwood Hall, and every other community, just like the municipality, cannot survive without volunteers. It's just a given. And on Friday, the 20th, it is the hospital radiothon. It's at Sobeys parking lot from 10 till 2-ish, sometime in there. And it's a great opportunity to support the hospital foundation in their fundraising campaigns. CAO.
Couple of the announcements I had have been taken, so that's fine. It's the last one is just brief. The Tiverton Ice is going in, and it should be available next Monday, and there is still some ice time available this fall.
Okay, so we need a mover and seconder. The council move into closed session pursuant to section 239 of the Municipal Act as amended for the purpose of considering the closed session minutes dated August 28, 2024, and a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board, specifically physician recruitment and retention, and a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, specifically a booster station option to purchase land, and further that council return to regular open meeting upon completion. Moved by councillors Hinchberger and Stewart. All in favor?